So today being the last full day of the Blackout beta for Black Ops 4, we had a lot of time to play around with it, especially players on PlayStation 4, and get our hands-on approach with the game that will, of course, launch fully in just under a month now at this point. But now with this full final day, and we looked around at the next week where the beta will no longer be upon us, I wanted to give some thoughts on the game itself with probably a full breakdown and review and all that kind of stuff about it tomorrow. But today I wanted to do a little bit of a different thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about 5 things that Blackout did right, and 5 things that I think Blackout did relatively wrong. Some things, of course, being more specific, some more general, and some overall blanket statements, while others more so targeted at specific individual items within the game. But regardless, I wanted to let you guys know about 5 things that I thought Blackout did fantastically, and also 5 things that I think were a little lukewarm with their reception, and hopefully get some adjustment later on down the line. That said, let's jump right into it. First thing, let's talk about the positives. Well, the first thing I noticed immediately when I jumped in was that it was a lot more fluid than I anticipated. The mechanics, the movements, all of it actually felt very good from the first game on until, well, right now whenever I'm wrapping up some of my later games in the week. And that was something that was a major point of concern for me, because when you take a look at just the scale of Blackout in particular and then compare it to literally any other project that we've seen in COD in the franchise over the last 10 years, it dwarfs everything. It is something, the map is absolutely massive, the amount of players is something we haven't seen. Sure, we had 48 within the headquarters of World War II, but that still even is almost half of what we end up seeing in Blackout. Plus then when you take in vehicles, all the weapons, all the perks, all of everything, it was an insanely massive project. So the fluidity of it, to see it be at a very stable point during the beta. I know that I've seen some clips out there of people getting glitched and all that kind of stuff. They'll end up falling through death barriers. There are some things with the map that still need ironed out with hitboxes, but overall, the vast majority of it I felt was very well done, especially in beta form. With still a month left to go until launch, probably a couple of weeks before it's certified gold and therefore pressed to a final update that we'll end up seeing at that October 12th launch date, it just felt very good. And another thing that honestly felt great was the connection. I know that my experience may very well differ from yours based on a number of different variables, maybe say like population of your region, your internet speed, and so many other things that can go into that. But honestly, the only time that I ever felt any lag was whenever I was playing with friends from either across the country or maybe across the pond over in Europe, and that is something that I was very pleasantly surprised about, especially again, taking into consideration all things that had to go into this and how much bigger of a project it was and how much of a stress more so on servers it was. Everything just felt fluid, and that was probably the biggest thing here that I think that Treyarch did right. It was a very well executed beta, I think, and of course we'll talk about why even more so in just a second, but that to me was probably one of the biggest things here out of the launch of the Blackout beta. The second thing I think Treyarch did incredibly well here with this is the seamless integration of absolutely everything within the world. From the points of interest being different named locations from various games in the Black Ops universe, from the Black Ops titles and World at War, all the way down to the vehicles and other things like that. Everything just felt right. Not to mention the nostalgia of visiting some of my favorite places, but also in a map in game that's up to date with the current times. That was something that was incredibly fun. So the seamless integration of absolutely everything, I think, was perfectly executed. Whenever I first heard the initial plans for Blackout, I thought, well, if they're gonna use different pieces of each map, they're probably just gonna be all thrown together. But it really feels like those locations and locales are a part of the world of Blackout. Not just, well, let's have a snow biome for Stronghold and across it a green lush raid. Instead, they made everything actually weave in and out of each other very well so that you end up having it being a part of that world. So while it's not a direct copy and paste, it is something that it is there just how you remember it, but just maybe slightly altered. After that, I think one of the coolest things here with me, and this is much smaller and a more specific item of detail, is one thing that you don't have in any other Battle Royale game mode. That being healing and activations while on the move. So for those of you guys that have played Fortnite, PUBG, H1Z1, all the way down, you name it, you can't actually do any healing or anything like that on the go, and that to me is one of the biggest deterrents, because if you're in a pinch situation, you really are kind of stuck there and have to hope the player doesn't see you, they can't hit their shots, or whatever the case may be, in which you get that extra 3 to 5 seconds or so to heal up, even slightly. But with Blackout, you can end up doing this on the go, and that really helps the gameplay in not only keeping the game fast and also giving you a chance to get back in the fight, but it's something that I think really took out that big hindrance of other battle royales and kind of applied it in a different manner to this game. So I'm all for that. You can activate healing, you can activate your perks, all that kind of stuff while on the move. The fourth thing that I think Treyarch did insanely well, and is something that I hope carries over into the full game, is the constant updates for Blackout. So far, there hasn't been a day where we haven't gotten a playlist update or an update in general, like a title update, since the beta started. So with that came along some different limited time modes, some different adjustments, some spawn rate things, some things, the wingsuit fixes, all sorts of things that changed out some small minor details or added in some things that are actually larger scale for the masses to play. Especially with limited time modes, I think that's a great idea to start out and get out there as soon as possible, and it gives me hope for the future. The only thing that I only have a slight concern about is once it ends up going into a full game, just how constant these updates will be. Simply because they have to then pass through Microsoft and Sony approval before being pushed out for everything like that. So with that, we'll see just how long this carries over, but I think that that constant line of communication and update definitely allows for a very promising future. And the final thing that I do want to mention here out of the Blackout beta that I think Treyarch did incredibly well was transparency. They were open about everything. They gave some thought process behind the design intent. They gave thought processing behind thinking about different community feedback and actually letting us know, well, this is why it probably wouldn't be a good reason and why, or wow, that's actually a pretty good idea. We'll try and look to implement that as soon as possible. So in that sense, the transparency and the communication is definitely crucial, and I think that following what World War II did and giving us weekly updates, if we can even have that at launch and maybe even further, I'm definitely all for that. That is how you create a great gaming experience between community and developer. But now let's take a little bit of focus to the things that I think could use some adjusting within Blackout, some things that the game didn't get exactly right, but there's definitely still hope for in the future. First of those being balancing of items. I'm sure you could rattle off a couple of things in particular of your own, but the biggest things to me that I think could use some balancing deal with the armor as well as the 9-bangs. The armor I think is going to be something that is an ever-going discussion and argument on how you should actually balance it. One big way that I've seen that is actually I think a decent remedy for this is that you decrease the amount of spawns for tier 1 armor, but then only put tier 2 armor in some drops, say like the mystery box and things like that, and either completely remove tier 3 armor or put them only in supply drops where there's like 5 or 6 of those in the game entirely, to which that'd be the only way they're available. Plus then you'd end up after killing somebody with them, it'd break and you wouldn't have the option to pick it up. So therefore you can kind of remedy it and how much in the world spawn there actually is, but in terms of actually the properties of it, you could also change those out as well, which that's continually being monitored. So I'm hopeful that there will be a point where it's not as much an issue as it was at the very beginning of the beta. Then other things like 9-bang, well, if those are a hit, well then you're absolutely done for. You're blind for a good 3 to 5 seconds and can't move on top of that. So other things like that, of course there are counters in game, but just the power that those things possess, and other things that, like I said, you could probably rattle off a few as well. Some power and performance of things may just need some slight tuning. As for that, we're going to take a little bit of a discussion into armor itself, not in the way of how it actually sponges bullets or anything like that, but armor indications. The one big thing that I've found here with armor is that it's very hard to tell that if you take a gunfight and headshot the player that you end up killing and you find they still have their armor on their body, you don't really have any indication as to if your armor is still in better condition than theirs, so if you pick it up, maybe you're taking yourself into a disadvantage for the next gunfight. There are some things right now that, yes, visually they added in the corner of where your armor is located. It'll show that it's no longer a full, say, level 3. It'll start to chip away and deteriorate a little bit, but I personally would love to see some percentage here with that. There's no real way to really discern what those indicators mean in terms of how many more shots you can end up taking. If you see that visually your armor 3 can take 5 shots and you're down to 20% of your armor's health, that usually means that you have 1 shot left before it breaks. But if there's an indicator saying that it's chipped in some spots, that could mean you could take 2, 3, 1, any of those number of shots you don't exactly know, so you can't gauge how involved you need to be or maybe how aggressive you can be in that next gunfight. The next thing that I know is going to have some changes for launch, but I'd still like to see some adjustments made outside of this are the looting mechanics. The pickup animations currently interfere with picking up items. If you say pick up a weapon, it will inspect that weapon before you actually can go in, and you have about a second to 2 seconds before you can pick anything up outside of that, which sometimes can be life or death, not only just an annoying feature. That was something that some of the developers did mention is going to be worked out for the final build of the game. They just couldn't have it put in with the beta because it was a little bit of a risky adjustment here mid-beta, and so therefore we'll see that adjusted for the final launch of the game, but currently not so much. The looting on console, I'd like to see a little bit of an adjustment as well. Looting on PC, if you guys haven't seen a direct comparison, is actually pretty solid. It's a lot more of a usable user interface than that of going into a bag and scrolling across for 10 seconds just to see what's there, plus also being out in the open. It's a lot quicker of a looting process on PC. I'd love to see that somewhat translate over into PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, if at all possible. And additionally, the final part to looting is that I'd love to see ammo being something that is a little bit more accessible. One way to remedy this is to simply, if we walk over ammo, it gives you it automatically, just like Fortnite would, because currently you have to look down and pick up every individual item you end up having, which again, I'd love to see that altered as well. Instead of you having to look down at it, it'll still pop up with the indicator to pick it up, even when looking down range, like we see with pretty much every other weapon pickup system in every Call of Duty previously. We never had to look directly at the weapon to get it to queue up, but I digress. That's also something that walking over that ammo would be something that really helps speed up the process and moves the engagements a little bit faster. Plus, additionally, maybe give all the ammo that a player had to that person that eliminates them once they go and inspect their bag, because that's something that having to go all the way to the end of their loot bag just to manually pick it up still can be a little strenuous. So if you automatically gain that ammo, I think that would speed up the process of the game tenfold as well. Another thing that I think needs some work and currently isn't in its proper state is something I haven't heard too much information on outside of it's just being investigated, but that being the spatial audio within Blackout. So I'm sure you guys may have run into this one or two times where you think you're tracking somebody with your audio if you have a headset or maybe your TV speakers, and it turns out they're not exactly where you think they are. This can probably most commonly be seen where you think you hear shots over a ridge, but it actually turns out they're 3 points of interest over, across a river and across a mountain. Additionally, another way that I think is best demonstrated with this is a construction site where there's multiple levels to the actual point of interest, but it sounds like they could be right next to you. Parking garage is a great example of this because I've had so many engagements where I think I'm on the top and somebody's right next to me, but it turns out they're 2 stories below me, and therefore I can't find them, and it just draws out the inevitable 1v1 that will happen by quite a long time. If you can end up locking in that audio to being more precise, where you can actually tell it's above, below, to your left, right, through some walls, or over some hills, all it really needs is some dampening, and it will really make the system a lot better, I think. Because right now, the audio is there, but it just travels through surfaces as if there's nothing there. Now, the final and biggest hurdle, I think, with Blackout, and what I don't think will happen immediately, is that it's not free to play. This is a very general and blanket statement, but it's something that I think is probably the biggest adversary to the game mode. And that's the only thing that I think will hurt the game long term. I think right now Treyarch has something golden on their plate that if they continue to work on this and continue to update it, it's gonna be fantastic. And I think that it honestly can take some of the market value of the Battle Royale genre. But that said, if you wanna regain total dominance in the market and take on a game that is by and far the titan of the gaming industry in general, that being Fortnite, it's a free-to-play game, and that's the biggest thing a lot of people will notice. First-time players are definitely going to be more than likely to try a free game than one that is behind a $60 entry barrier. And I'm talking about solely capitalizing on new players who've never played before, not somebody that's like, well, I guess I'll give Blackout a try, but I'm really here for zombies or multiplayer. I'm talking about gaining an audience that was not there before. So, to me, I think you can maybe remedy this by maybe either offering a free trial period or something like that, or maybe even long-term releasing Battle Royale as the free-to-play side mode here with this, but it's a major hindrance, I know, from a business perspective. I understand the risk of cutting out a part and giving it for free, but given the climate of the industry's shift and the entirely feasible execution that an example already out there has a wild success story with, that jump would do wonders to take that risk. And I'm talking not only monetarily from business value for Activision's sense, but also just the player numbers in general to the Call of Duty brand would boom if it was free to play. So to me, I think that is maybe the biggest long-term hindrance that the game may have or obstacle it may face. But hopefully from a Call of Duty fan perspective, hopefully it is something that doesn't cause too many problems in the long run. But right now, I think that we're in a great spot starting Blackout's beta out and going into the full launch in just under a month. I'm excited for what the game holds and what the game mode in particular of Blackout has in the future. But that said, that's what's gonna wrap it up. So that's my 5 good and 5 bad, I think, here with this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below if you agree, disagree, whatever it may be. If you have some things to add, feel free to down there in the comments down below. But that said, that's where we're gonna wrap it up. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. If you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Blackout, Black Ops 4, Call of Duty World War II, all that good stuff. We got you covered here up on the channel, so if any of that interests you, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter, that's the best place to get connected with me outside of YouTube, practically live on Twitter. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is in the description below. And also, Instagram, a little more active over there as well, so that link is down there for you to check out. That said, hopefully you guys have a fantastic day. Thanks so much for watching. Mine's been Espresso. Take care, and peace.